Hello, and welcome back to Conquering Finale. My name is Jason Lafredo, and we have our last video in grappling with graphics. Yep, it's a short category. There's not a whole lot to the graphics tool, so here we are, 3 lessons and done. We're talking about exporting graphics today. So let's move over here. We'll go to our graphics tool, and let's go into our graphics menu, and we're looking at the very first 2 options. The first is called Export Selection, and you'll see that that's grayed out right now. It's because, well, I don't have a selection made. I'm going to show you how to do this in the second half of this video, but we're going to start with the second option here, which is Export Pages. So let's select that option, and we get this little unassuming window that will allow us to export pages. And it's a little bit obvious, but we'll go through everything because there's some tricks to some of this. So the first thing you'll notice is that you have a file type, and you'll see that you have the options for JPEG, PDF, PNG, SVG, and TIF. That's it. Now everything except the JPEG option will allow for transparencies. With JPEG, you can see that the allow transparency option is grayed out, but any of the other ones, you'll see this option becomes available. And when you check that, you will indeed get a transparent background. Now the background, Finale considers, if you look at this page of music, everything that's white is the background. So without the transparency, you'll actually get the white page, but with the transparency, the only thing that you're exporting really is the black ink. So you'll get the text, the staff lines, and everything that shows through will be transparent. So this is useful in certain circumstances. Like if you wanted to export the pages and put them on some other type of background, use the transparency option so that the background will actually show through the music, right? Now at the bottom of the window, you'll see these resolution options, but these resolution options are only available for the JPEG, the PNG, and the TIF formats. The PDF options, you will not get resolutions, and the SVG options, you will also not get resolution options. So only the JPEG, PNG, and TIF options will allow you to change the resolution. And you have some preset options here, 72, 150, 300, 600, 1200, and other. Of course, you can just type in whatever you want. Now, as far as choosing the resolution, my advice here is always to sort of go higher than you think you need. The higher the resolution, the larger the graphic ultimately. But if you're familiar with how this works, if the graphic is larger and you shrink it down, you won't get any pixelation. In fact, the image will look very smooth. But if you choose a really small resolution and try and blow it up, then you're going to see all the pixels and it's not going to look very good. So I always recommend, sticking on the higher side for the resolution, just in case. Interestingly, in the manual, it says that only the TIF file format allows for resolution changes, but that's weird because it definitely works for PNG and JPEG as well. And then since we're exporting pages, we do have these options for the pages. We can export all the pages, or we can export a range of pages, and this works exactly like you think. Now in the middle section, you have 2 options here. You can generate the names from whatever's here, and it's pre-populating with the actual file name, but you can type in whatever you want here. Or you can prompt for each name. And you also have this save in option, which will allow you to choose what folder you want to save in. I'm just saving it in my desktop for now. But there's a couple important things to realize here. When you are exporting more than one page, let's say I have the all pages option selected here, and you're using any graphic format except for PDF, so JPEG, PNG, SVG, or TIF. When you export all the pages, Finale is going to export them as individual files. So that's why you have these 2 options. So if you generate the names from this as PNGs, and actually I'll just go ahead and do this and click OK, you'll see that it's going to export all 8 pages individually, and it will name them with that file name with the number 001, with the number 002, etc. But you can see that these are all, individual files that's being exported. Let's just undo that. If you choose the prompt for each name, and again, if you have multiple pages selected here and click OK, it's literally going to prompt you for the name of every single page. So page 1, and then it'll ask you for page 2, and then it will ask you for page 3, etc. I'm just going to stop here so you get the point. So that's the difference between the generate option versus the prompt for each name option here. Incidentally, the PDF, when you do all pages, it won't generate names from or whatever. It'll just save it as the file name, and it will combine it into one file. So now I've got all 8 pages in the one PDF here. So that's the difference between PDF in this particular window as far as generating names and whether or not it's an individual file or a combined file. The other thing that's worth mentioning here is that when you export pages, it will only export the pages from the currently viewed layout. In this case, I'm looking at the score, so that's why every time I export the pages, it exports from the score. If I wanted to export the flute part, I'd have to, open up the flute linked part and then do the export pages, and then I can export all of the flute pages. So there is an interesting question here, particularly regarding PDFs. What's the difference between exporting pages as PDFs in the graphics tool versus, printing to PDF? If you're on a Mac, you go to the print window here and you have the option all the way at the bottom to save as PDF, right? What would be the difference? Well, there's a few. And the first has to do with the coloring, which is actually not an issue anymore. So just long story short, in previous versions of Finale, literally before this 0.4 release of 27, when you printed to PDF like this, it would not print to true blacks. It would be slightly gray, which was a problem in some cases for some printers, it would actually use some of the color ink, which is kind of not really good. But if you were to export PDFs from the graphics tool, it always exported as pure black. Well, they made a change in 27.4 to address this, and the change that they made was to add this option here called Use RGB. Now, this is the old way that Finale did it, and when you have this checked, it will indeed export PDFs that are not quite true black, and you'll have that same problem with those printers. If you uncheck this, then instead of using RGB coloring, you're using CMYK coloring, which is slightly different. In CMYK, when you save as PDF, will come out as true black. So again, this will be checked by default, but if you're really particular about this, uncheck this option and it will use a CMYK coloring and you'll get true blacks with your print to PDF. So for that reason, in 27.4, it doesn't quite matter if you print a PDF or export pages as PDF. The one difference in the export pages from the graphics tool is that you can actually have transparency on the PDF, which again can come in handy depending on how you're using these PDFs, whether or not you're putting them in a different program with a background, etc. So of course you don't have the allow transparency when you print to PDF. The other advantage to printing PDF versus exporting to PDF is that you can actually print to multiple PDFs. You can just check all of the parts, for example, although you have to be careful about whether or not the score is a different page size and everything. But anyway, you can check all of the parts and save those as PDF, and you'll get individual files for all the parts. You can't do that when you export as PDFs from the graphics tool, because you literally have to open every single linked part, export it, and then go to the next linked part, export it, etc. So again, printing to PDFs has that advantage. And then of course, exporting pages, when you use any of the other file types, obviously there's different advantages. You can change the resolutions, you can, and then obviously it'll export individual files, which will probably make it easier if you are actually trying to put those graphics into a different program, right? So again, that's just sort of the difference between printing to PDF versus exporting pages in this way. Now let's move on to exporting a selection. And for this, I'm actually going to move over to the oboe part. I'll zoom in here a little bit, and we're just going to try and export this little measure right here, right? So as I mentioned before, when you go to the graphics menu, the export selection is grayed out. So you have to make a selection. And to do that with the graphics tool selected, just double click, hold, and drag so you get this sort of box being drawn. And then when you release, you'll get a permanent box with handles that you can adjust. And you can adjust them however you need to. You can adjust the corners. If you hold down Shift, again, it will constrain the dragging so the proportion remains the same. Or you can just, basically set this up however you need it to, and you're good to go. So now I have my graphic selection. Now I go to the graphics tool and I can export the selection. And basically you get the same window. The only difference is that you don't have the pages options. Obviously you're not exporting a whole page, so you can't export all or certain pages, right? But everything else is the same. You have the same file types, you have the same ability to allow transparency, you have the same resolution options, generate names, all this stuff. It's all exactly the same, right? So again, let's just try this. And I always, recommend, choose a resolution that's a little bit higher than you think you need. I'll go all the way up to 1200. I'm going to save this and I'll call this oboe, right? I'm going to save that to the desktop, and we can see when we open that, it's a huge graphic. But again, when you shrink it down, you're not going to get the problem of pixelation, right? Let's actually do that again. Let's export as 72, right? Just to see the difference. I'll call this oboe 72. See what that looks like. And you can see how tiny the graphic is. And you can already see it's pixelated, but if I zoom it up, by zooming in, you can really see how pixelated it is. So again, just my advice is always to choose a much larger resolution than you think you need. And the other thing to note here is that notice that the graphic is all black and white, right? In the Finale file, when you have Finale open, you see the colors. You see the green for the expressions, the red for the slurs, etc. When you export a graphic like this, you get a completely black and white graphic, right? Compare that to if I were to say do a screenshot, Command-Shift-4 on a Mac, and just drag out a rectangle box like that, that will give you a screenshot. And notice that the screenshot has the colors. It has the green, it has the red. Even the background isn't pure white. You have a little bit of an off-white color for the background in Finale, again, compared to the pure version when you export as graphics. So, most of the time it's probably better to export the graphics unless you specifically need to show something in Finale related to the different colors here. But yeah, definitely worth using the export, in my opinion, more often than not. Now, the other thing I want to show you in practical terms is, this graphic that I just exported, this is not transparent, so it does have a white background. Let me just show you the implications of that. If I just open up a Keynote presentation that I just started here with, you see this sort of parchment background. If I try and drag that in here, and we can resize this a little bit, you see what the problem is that you get that white box. Like there's, that's not exactly the best way to do that. But if we were to make that graphic export again, let's just draw this out one more time and do export selection, and we'll do PNG, we'll do 1200, we'll do allow transparency this time, and we will call this Oboe transparent, just like that, and then go into Keynote one more time and drag the transparent version in. You'll see that this is much better in this particular case because you can retain the sort of parchment background here without getting this ugly white box. So again, that's just sort of a good practical reason for using that transparency. Incidentally, just a super tip here: if you want a very specific music character that you need to put into a different program or whatever, it's really easy to just kind of create something. This Fortissimo marking, and just draw a small little box around it with the graphic tool. There we go. Export selection. Again, make it really big. Allow transparency. Okay. We'll call this Fortissimo. And again, we can just throw that into this Keynote presentation, and you have a nice little Fortissimo marking outside of Finale. So you can see how quick it can be to get these characters in a different program just by doing that. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, I'm going to go over to this other file where I actually have graphics embedded in the pages here. There is sort of a weird thing happening with graphics when you have graphics on the page. So if I were to go up here and do export pages, I'm just going to export page 1 here. Yeah, we'll do it as a PNG, right? Not allow transparency. We'll do that. We'll just call this page 1 for now. I'm just going to show you something. I'm going to save that here, and I'm going to open this, and you'll see a problem. You can see that the Conquering Finale logo here just got like totally moved to the right, and it's sort of off the page. The rest of the graphics are fine. It only seems to affect page attached graphics for whatever reason. I could not figure this out, and I believe it's just truly is a bug. For whatever reason, these graphics get kind of thrown around into the wrong places, and it just does not work. So it's a really random bug that you really can't export pages as graphics when you have page attached graphics in the file. However, at least on a Mac, if you were to, let's just do page 1, if you were to export or save as a PDF, print a PDF like this, print to PDF, just so I know the difference. There we go, and I open this. Now that that graphic is in the right place. So it's bizarre. I don't have an explanation for this, but it seems that when you print a PDF, the page attached graphics seem to behave correctly. When you export any graphic, whether it's PNG or PDF, the page attached graphics get kind of thrown in random places and it just doesn't work. So just another really random bug. Just be careful when you have page attached graphics using the graphics tool to export. All right, so that's all I have to say about exporting graphics. That's all I have to say about grappling with graphics in general. Like I said, it's a short series. There's not a whole lot to the graphics tool, but hopefully you've learned a thing or two. Hopefully you've got some new tricks up your sleeve, particularly with exporting graphics, which can be useful in certain cases. So yeah, there you go. Once again, thanks for watching. As always, please, please, please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you soon on the next video.